Alright, it is time to do a camera comparison between the 5-year-old iPhone 11, the 4-year-old iPhone 12, and the latest Apple offering, which is the iPhone 16. Now a disclaimer before we start the video, all shots taken with the iPhone 16 are in the standard or the stock mode and no settings have been tinkered with at all. Now with that out of the way, let's actually see how much better is Apple's latest offering compared to these older iPhones. The first comparison is probably the most important one for a lot of people, which are portrait shots. Okay, so looking at the first portrait shot, the differences are quite noticeable. This is a full body portrait of yours truly. Now as soon as I compare the shots, the first difference I note is the type of blur effect each phone has. The 11 just blurs everything at the same level except for the person, while the 12 and 16 do seem to have a gradual bokeh effect which seems more natural to the eyes. The 11 even blurs my shoes and legs a little while the 12 does not, and the 16 does it too. Honestly, I like the 12 better just in this case cause it seems to do a better job in the bottom section of the image, but let's move on to the top where the real test is. In terms of edge detection, all phones are doing well, especially around the hoodie and the legs, but my face is where they seem to fall apart a little. Now starting with the iPhone 11, the phone has a hard time differentiating between my face and the leaves in the background, so the edges are a bit messy. Another hit and miss with portrait shots are the temples of the glasses. The iPhone 11 once again isn't able to do a good job to my left side. Hairs are also probably the toughest to get right in portrait shots, and the iPhone 11 shows why. Honestly, still not bad for a 5-year-old camera. The iPhone 12 on the other hand seems to do a bit better than the 11 in terms of differentiating between the background and my face. Now while it's doing a slightly better job with my hair, it is still not perfect. Now just like the iPhone 11, the left temple of my glasses is not properly differentiated. And finally, the iPhone 16 does a better job than the rest, but still kind of messes a bit around the hair. Amazingly though, it is able to do a great job with the temple of my glasses. Overall, I would choose the iPhone 16 for this shot since it's doing a great job with the blur effect as well as edge detection. I also like the punchier colors of the 16 more. Plus, if you look at the sky in the background, it is actually totally washed out in the 11 and 12 while the 16 is able to keep it in focus. The second shot is a slightly close-up portrait taken in the shadows while the background has plenty of sunlight. It is a slightly tougher scenario for any phone, so let's see how each of these phones perform. Starting with edge detection, it is actually pretty solid in each photo. The 11 does falter a bit around the hair while the 12 does better and 16 does it best. The background in each photo is also in focus and not washed out like in the previous shot. The major difference I do see is the color reproduction. For some reason the 12 just doesn't look nice and with that artificial glow around my face. The only problem I seem to have with the 11 is its crushing of the shadows. The black levels are just too damn low. The 16 is doing slightly better in this aspect. For me, it is a tough decision to choose a single shot, but either of the 11 or 16 is doing pretty damn great. Now let me know which one you like as well. The third shot is indoors and all phones seem to be doing really well. Weirdly enough, the iPhone 16 is not blurring the leaves of the plant in the background too well. Other than that, edge detection is solid and color reproduction is on point. The 11 and 12 do seem a tad bit brighter, which a lot of people would like, but the differences are minuscule. The next shot is of my beautiful mom. Shout out to her for agreeing to be a part of this video. Now this is an easy one to choose. The iPhone 16 is miles better, the colors, contrast and everything else is superior on the 16. Probably the worst of the bunch is with its fake looking glow filter or whatever that is. On the 11 it seems like that filter is still there but it has been toned down a bit. Not sure what happened in this photo but it is disappointing to see the 11 and 12 do so bad. Moving on, the 16 once again proves why a newer phone with a better camera and processing is reigning the top. The 11 and 12 are just playing catch up with the 16 in terms of edge detection, color accuracy, and blur effect. Once again, 12 is the worst of the bunch, which is so weird. I did not expect that at all. The final photo is of my dashing brother. And this is where the iPhone 16 did something weird. While the 11 and 12 were able to take a portrait shot, the iPhone 16 just refused to do so. Also, I didn't notice it until later in the day, so reproducing this shot wasn't possible. Now I strongly remember taking a portrait shot with each phone, and the 16 not having it is probably a miss on the phone's part. It also didn't even take any depth information, so I couldn't even apply the portrait effect later. Really weird, but I did want to point it out. Out of the 11 and 12, both phones are doing great. Overall, portrait photography seems to be great on all iPhones, even though the 11 and 12 do seem to lag behind the iPhone 16 in certain cases. Let me know in the comments down below which phone you think did the best and which phone did the worst. With that out of the way, let's move on to some non-portrait shots. In the first shot, the iPhone 11 seems to once again crush shadows and make the image too contrasty. The 12 is doing slightly better, but not as much as the 16. The 16 has a much more natural look to it, with the shadowy parts of the face visible, but not so much that they start looking fake. The following two photos follows a similar trajectory as their portrait counterparts. The 12 seems to have a filter of some sorts, while the 11 has it toned down. The 16 is the best of the bunch with a more natural and well-balanced shot. I'm not really sure what was going on with the iPhone 12. The last photo is the one where it's hard to choose. The 11, 12 and 16 all produce a great shot. The 11 looks almost as great, if not slightly better than the 16. I'm actually really impressed with the 11 here. With that out of the way, let's do some ultra-wide people shots. The 11 and 12 have the exact same sensors, so expect the photos to look a Xerox of each other. The 16 has a slightly better sensor, so it should be minutely better than the other two. And that is evident from the first three photos. The 11 and 12 produce much darker looking shots due to a less wider aperture, while the 16 is doing an awesome job in producing great photos. The last shot is the only one where it's almost the same. It's exactly like the shot taken with the main sensor. Other than that, it's quite evident that the 16 has a superior ultra-wide camera. We'll keep the party going with some random ultra-wide shots. Now, while the winner in the ultra-wide people category was easy to pick, it is going to be much more difficult with random daytime shots. Almost each shot is very similar with minor differences in white balance. All phones have well-balanced and color-accurate shots. Honestly, if I remove the naming here, you wouldn't even be able to tell apart most of the shots. The only two shots I could really tell the iPhone 16 is doing better is the one where the sky is washed out on the 11 and 12 while it's still in focus on the 16, and the other one where the 16 seems to do a much better job with the sun than the other two. Other than that, the ultra-wide shots are the exact same. I find the ultrawide sensor the least used camera for me, but it might be something a lot of you like. I think a dedicated zoom sensor is much more useful. Off topic, but that is why I consider the Pixel 4 ahead of its time. Now with the random daytime ultrawide shots out of the way, let's see how the larger 48 megapixel sensor of the 16 does compare to the 12 megapixel of the other two. Just like the ultrawide shots, the photos taken with the main sensor are also very similar. The colors, dynamic range, contrast, shadows seem to be an exact match. Barring a couple of images where the iPhone 12 seems to reproduce their brightening filter, and one image where the iPhone 16 focused on the light flower, which honestly could have been me focusing, the rest of the images seem to be a replica of each other. The iPhone 16 does have the advantage of producing a more pronounced blur effect in the background just because of that bigger main sensor. Also, I am making a video about upgrading from the first gen AirPods to the AirPods 4 with active noise cancellation, so subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss it. Now, just because the shots look similar doesn't mean the iPhone 16 is no good compared to the 11 and 12. Keep in mind that you are looking at these shots after being processed on a video editor and then compressed by YouTube while uploading. When looking at these photos side by side, there is more detail and sharpness in the iPhone 16 shots. And then of course the iPhone 16 camera has much more capabilities such as the 2x zoom, the cinematic video mode, the ability to change the mood of the photo with the tone changing feature, and much more. But then again, if you are just looking to upload a photo on social media, I guess any of these phones will do well. Another interesting comparison I wanted to do was with the zoom capabilities of these phones. Now while the iPhone 16 can do a 10x zoom, the 11 and 12 are actually limited by just 5x. Also, the 16 can technically do a 2x optical zoom due to that 48 megapixel sensor. And this is where it shines. The amount of detail and sharpness the 16 can preserve at 5x is pretty amazing. While the 2x zoom looks pretty similar on all phones, the 16 is a tiny bit sharper, especially when looking at the photos side by side in real world. As I said before, while the shots do look similar on YouTube, the real world story is a tiny bit different. Moving on to the video from the main sensor. While this is a 4K 30p video, all phones can do 60 frames as well. And the 12 and 16 can also do Dolby Vision HDR, with the 12 limited to 30 and the 16 limited to 60 frames. Here the 16 shines through and through. The colors are much more natural and balanced. I think the 12 is the worst of the bunch while the 11 is still decent. Another advantage clearly visible in the video is the sensor shift OS of the 16, which makes its video much smoother than the other two. Once again, the 16 can do a 2x optical zoom in video as well, but it wouldn't be a fair comparison since the 11 and 12 cannot do it. Okay, so now that we have taken a look at the outside video quality, it is also time to test an important aspect of these cameras, which is the audio quality. Now you might be using either of these phones in the future to upload content on social media, so I think audio quality is one of the most important aspects of these phones. Now this is a controlled environment, but it is going to be a bit echoey since this is a big room. But let me know how the audio quality sounds either way from each of these phones. Personally, I think the iPhone 16 is going to be the best of the bunch due to its newer cameras and better microphones. But even then, let me know in the comments down below how each of these phones is doing, which one you like in terms of video and audio, and let's continue on with the video. After all the rear cameras, let's also take a look at the front selfie shooter. Barring a few minor differences in the aperture and the autofocus capability, the 12 megapixel sensor is the same across all three phones. Even then, the iPhone 16 manages to produce better looking shots with much more color accuracy than the other two. Just like the main camera sensor portraits, the phones follow a similar trend of edge detection. Overall, I'm still satisfied with the shots taken by the iPhone 11. Its color tone is quite similar to the iPhone 16. The iPhone 12 once again produces that brightness effect in a couple of photos. Not a huge deal as I'm someone who rarely takes portraits. And since the sensors are so familiar, I didn't do a video comparison. Actually I did, and the videos were so similar that I decided to exclude it in this comparison. But here's a minor snippet of the video just to keep everyone happy. And we are now in the final leg of the comparison. It is time to take a look at some nighttime shots. The 11 can only do night photos with the main sensors, so the ultrawide and front camera are not really much of a competition to the others. While the 12 and 16 produce some amazing shots, the 16 does have the upper leg with more detailed and well-lit shots due to that bigger 48 megapixel sensor. Now I'm someone who doesn't take too many nighttime photos, but I guess if you are someone who does, then you probably need the latest and greatest offering from Apple. While the 11 lags behind, the 12 is not that bad. Of course, when you compare the shots side by side, the 16 will look superior, but the 12 is a 4-year-old phone. Can't really blame it for that. And the story continues with the video as well. All phones suffer greatly from the lens flare, and while Apple continues to tout improvements with their latest iPhones, I feel this isn't the case. The lighting in the video was also plenty, so the phones do seem to produce some respectable results. Other than that, nothing much to discuss here. And that is the camera comparison between the iPhone 11, 12 and 16. Now, it is evident that the iPhone 16 offers some great improvements that are not possible on these 4 and 5-year-old iPhones. And apart from what we discussed in the video itself, the 16 offers features which are not present on the 11 and 12. Now, as a content creator myself, I think I would choose the iPhone 16, but if you're the kind of person who just wants to upload some photos on social media, the 11 and 12 still hold up pretty well. And that's it for this video, folks. Subscribe and I will catch you all in the next one.